It's like sometimes we get so focused on the ICP and only marketing to them that we just like swat away the fans. We are seeing a marketing reallocation to live events that's unprecedented. We have created economy. We've created jobs, right? We have changed the perception of some of the world's most important ideas. Like,
Please welcome to the Goldenhour stage, Nancy Duarte.
you are so sweet. You know how fond I am of you. you're,
Likewise. Oh my
you're
goodness.
just amazing. And I think the context of this whole thing is very important right now. So thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Of course. No, thanks for being here. And I want to unpack everything because a lot of this thinking, of course, was shaped by you and the work that you've done and the Duarte team has done over the years on talking about the value of storytelling in business, where, again, maybe the performance marketers in the room or others, might have said, oh, do we even need story? Like, does that even matter? And of course, we know just how important it is to not just our professional context, but our humanity as a whole. So I'd love to start there if you're willing. You've worked with the best businesses in the world around communicating their ideas, from Apple to TED speakers, and really kind of championing the idea of story. What do you think makes storytelling such a human act in business?
Yeah. Well, our brains are wired for story. That's established from putting fMRI machines up to the human brain.
Wow.
And it's visceral. And if people can feel what you're trying to say, they'll move more quickly than like understanding it in their brain. But what's interesting is when there's a presenter or a speaker or a communicator, and when they speak in the shape and or tell stories, you get a visceral connection to them. But then the weird thing that happens, because we host storytelling events in our own culture, you get this very fascinating connection to the people that experienced it. It's like in the room when it happened kind of a thing.
Wow.
And it creates this effervescence and a bond between you and the speaker and the people in the room. So there's really nothing that can do it. And, the performance marketers here are spending millions of dollars to get the people in the room.
Yeah.
And then you have to make it very alive and vibrant, when you're in the room together, and story does that.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, I didn't even already off the gates, I didn't consider that story isn't just like something that moves us emotionally, but binds us together for those that were there to hear it. That's amazing. And I'm hopeful communication channels like this too. Obviously, I wish we were all here in one room together talking, but hopefully, you all feel connected to kind of this mission that we're helping lead here. We talk about AI, right? And again, I don't think AI is, my 2 cents at least, the enemy necessarily of story, but we have this thing now that could write, that could design, that could analyze instantly. And do you think that, or what's your kind of overall impression on AI in the sense of, is story still going to be the thing that ultimately moves people on the other side of this adoption?
I think so. I'm trying my best. I kind of, my exec team is running my company for 2 years while I try to figure out this tsunami called AI. And how can you make an executive grade storytelling tool based in empathy? Like, I'm not going to build a thing unless it's empathy first, audience first, get the scales to fall off everyone's eyes to make it be effective. What it can't do is it can't write my personal narrative for me. It doesn't know me. It can't connect me. It can't create an atmosphere where everyone feels safe to tell a story, to be vulnerable, to go there to the messy middle of the story. It can't do any of that. Like, I host these events with really powerful people in my home, right? And I create an atmosphere and get permission by saying my own story and setting the tone. And if I said his name, everyone would know who he was. And he cries, and I hug him on the way. I said, I just love men that cry. He goes, I don't cry. I only cry at your home. I only cry here. And I'm like, oh, and I'm not saying, grown men should cry all the time. But when you really go there and you create this atmosphere for humanity and for bonding, it's incredible. It is absolutely, it's an absolute incredible experience. AI, if we're in a room together, I can actually see the flesh tone of your skin change. I can see your eyes dilate. I could see the sparkle, or I could see the you're downcast or whatever. And right now AI can't adapt. It can't adapt
Yeah.
to me observing what to say next by just watching you react to what I'm saying. So I think there's nothing more beautiful
Yeah.
than story.
And I'm so like hopeful in all of this because I
Me
do
too.
think there's like this renaissance that's happening, like this,
Yep.
yeah, like I think most of us like welcome this disruption and AI and everything, but also like are clinging on to what makes us human. And so it
Yeah.
feels like story is just going to be kind of the increasingly kind of more and more of a priority
Yeah.
within
And
companies.
genuine, authentic stories too,
Mm.
not
Yeah.
ones chummed up, not AI slop
Right.
stories.
Right. But actually, let's talk about that because in your newsletter, you talked that there are ways to deploy AI to help in terms of clarifying
Mhm.
data, maybe suggesting some different kind of narrative structures,
Mhm.
and as you referenced, but it doesn't feel sort of emotion, or empathy, or doesn't sense kind of emotion.
Yeah.
Um, how do you see just the interplay between humans and AI in telling stories? I'm just curious about the sort of working dynamic that you think could evolve over time.
Yeah, I think it can't proactively pick for you the proper story to tell, right? You
Yeah.
you can use it to help predict, like if I'm in this situation where the audience is resistant, where it can help you predict potential outcomes. So one of our tools, you stick a deck in, and it gives you 10 Q&A questions, 10 if they're resistant, 10 if they're curious, which is kind of
Oh,
interesting, right? So like do a little prep work, and you can help it there, and that way you're a little prepared. It can't write your story
yeah.
for you. So, like I said, it can't adapt in the room. I mean, some of that I was just saying kind of answers that because it can't be that, and I hope it never does become that. Like I
Yeah.
don't want to have conversations with a robot fake dilating his eyes, you know.
Can you imagine?
So yeah, and shaping even data in the shape of a story is very powerful. When you shape it in a certain way, people can remember the insights from the data
Yeah.
and stuff like that. We have a whole course about that, which is really powerful because you overlay story over the data to drive change up and down an organization and make decisions. And AI can't do that. It can help you maybe shape it, but it can't drive decision making up and down your org. That's
Yeah.
human things. Humans have to do those
Totally.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the way you reference this kind of jogged the thought. I was like, I hope it doesn't get there. But I think at this point, at least, AI has no original ideas,
Yeah.
right? It's all just whatever inputs into the word calculator then gives us sort of a outcome. And that's where I think this language around taste has started to develop as well,
Yeah.
that, only humans can both input enough context to really generate some type of outcome, but then
Mhm.
just copy and pasting that outcome into like a blog post or whatever you're writing isn't good either. We need to
Mhm.
make to sort of come in again at the back end of the process and make sure that we're using that as like a guiding light, or I don't know, whatever
Yeah.
it is to help
Agree.
inform the thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, one of my favorite quote, I think I've quoted you with this. It'd be embarrassing if I'm wrong, but too many great ideas die on the conference room floor. And it's something that I love coming up with new ideas. I love brainstorming. I love, just kind of trying to think about what the future could or should look like and bring
Yeah.
things to the table. But, I don't know, 1 out of 10 end up getting like funded or put into practice. Um, why does that happen to a executive, to an entrepreneur, or to a marketer, and maybe like what can we be doing better to ensure that our ideas actually get adopted within a business?
Yeah. I love that. And I've mentioned it, I think once, is empathy, really
Yeah,
understanding who they are, what they need to hear, what it is that about your idea, what is it about the product that sets them free, that creates human flourishing for them. Like so often when you're the entrepreneur or the inventor, like we trained a very famous shoe company. I can't mention names, and their designers would just like put the red shoe and be like, the shoe's red. And it was an 18-month project to make that red shoe, right? Can you convince me why I should fund that red shoe prototype, right? And so it takes like empathy, but it takes shaping the big idea. And at Duarte, that's like the big idea, TM, because it's a specific formula of here's my unique point of view, and here's what's at stake if they do or do not adopt my point of view written as a sentence. So making that really clear and then building your content to support that one thing you're trying to
Yes.
convey, and then convey it in a very clear, very concise, visual way. If people can see what you're saying, they understand you. And so I would say those are the things that make ideas fail.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I think people are so bombarded with messages and stories
Yes.
that if you have like the
Yes.
one cognitive reference that you want to create in people's minds and focus on kind of building from there, that resonates quite a bit.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Sorry. You mentioned empathy in a few times, and I think in my understanding of the Duarte method, empathy is sort of at the heart of this.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of folks, if they're watching and they're founders, entrepreneurs, kind of trying to build their story, or maybe they're an existing at scale company but are repositioning now in context of AI or in sort of this new moment. They sort of, I think, miss like how do we get started, like the operator's manual to actually telling a good story. So I'd love to unpack a few elements of the method if you're willing
Oh yeah, that'd be
to
fun.
share. And part of this, I think, comes from your study of some of the most powerful presentations ever given, MLK, Steve Jobs, and that some of these best communicators follow this rhythm of contrast. I think you refer to it as like what is versus what could be.
Yeah.
Why does that tension just move audiences so deeply?
Yeah. Well, that's the part of the brain science, right? When there's
Mm,
this rise of tension in a story, the brain wants cathartic release. And so you could see that the brain lighting up when there's tension, and then it resolves when the tension is resolved. So I knew there was a rhythm and a cadence to the greatest speeches,
yeah.
but I didn't know what it was, because it's not like there's like an anecdote, an anecdote, an anecdote, an anecdote. It's like there was just this rhythm and a cadence to it. And so when I really identified that, that's where the gap was between what is, what could be, go back to what is, what could be, what is, what could be, and then state a new bliss, which is
Mm,
this is how the world is going to be better if you adopt my idea. I mean, you don't say that, but you paint a picture of how great the world's going to be if you adopt this idea. And wow, I mean, it applies to everyone. Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln. It applies to everybody. Every speech I
that
could
same
find that was
pattern you
deemed a great speech. Yeah.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible.
Jesus' Sermon on the Mount maps to it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Mhm.
And what's I think part of that tension to the rise and the fall. I think you guys have sort of thought through that and put into a bit of a framework. I think it's called the
Yeah.
presentation spark line.
Uh-huh.
Um, how do just if someone's hearing this and they're like, okay, like how do I kind of bring that model into the story that we want to tell?
Yeah.
What's your sort of guidance for them on using that same rhythm for their maybe internal presentations or external
Yeah.
presentations with customers?
Yeah, well, first you do the empathy, and then you do the big idea, and then
Right.
you can start to brainstorm the ideas around what is and what could be, what is and what could be new bliss. So I actually wrote, hoping you would ask this, I wrote out a little example for
Oh, great.
marketers, and it's not a script. It's like, here's a version of what is, here's another example of what could be. And so like for marketing, it could be, here's what is. Marketers are pressured to churn out more content with diminishing engagement. What could be? Focused on a story driven piece that resonates deeply with the right audience. What is the generic templates, and the AI generated is so the same, and it's slop. What could be, you could just be distinctive through human centered storytelling that cuts through the noise, and the new bliss, which is whatever your promise is, but I
Yeah.
wrote it that it's a content engine that earns trust, and marketing is going to be driving inbound demand because it sounds like you. a human,
Mm,
right? So it's like that was an example of like what could be, what could be
that's amazing.
shaped. So you could kind of feel that, the
Yeah.
contrast happening, ultimately moving you toward your idea adopted.
Yeah. You have people that are listening and then I know, uh, resonate is the word, but they see themselves in that pain that you're describing, and then the
Yeah,
payoff kind of comes right afterwards. So
yeah.
it's a beautiful, beautiful model, an effective model.
Cool.
Um, and but one thing that I don't know if it's counterintuitive necessarily, but like what what we often see, I think, with creative marketers that are embracing story and more of the editorial side of the practice is, I think, maybe almost like an aversion to data or an aversion to
Mm, mm.
more of the quant side. Like we've been like positioned like qualitative, quantitative as opposites, which they are. Um, but data has a important role to play in storytelling. I think you guys have a full practice around data
Yeah.
storytelling. Period. Um, the risk, I imagine, is like what a lot of leaders who are building decks, kind of creating stories, is to just put a bunch of data into the deck versus kind of architecting it into their kind of narrative framework. Um, do you think that there's this, or do you think, do buyers make purchasing decisions um, on rational information more, or is it more of the emotional story that drives some of the purchasing behaviors? Do they work together in practice? I'm curious how you see those two.
Yeah, I mean, I think they work together in practice. There's two kinds of appeals, right? There's emotional appeal, logical appeal. I think you can make a case for numbers. You could just flip them the numbers, but how you frame the numbers to make a case, you can shape that in the form of a story.
Okay.
What's really interesting is we work a lot with analytical, like we can do a data storytelling transformation across an analytical organization. And they're like, it freaks, just the word story can freak out an analytical person because they're like, I don't go to work to feel. You're to make me
Yeah.
feel at work. And they're like, I'd really rather stay in my thinking center. And you're going to make me go to this place I reserve, just for my private friends. And so we have to adopt it. Data is so pervasive. I mean, when I started my business, dude, I mean, you could be my child. Uh, we just had accounting data. That's all we had. We had a P&L. Everything we did had to be based on intuition. We had to, in some way, prophetically imagine the direction we should go just based on human interaction. My customers, we didn't have a CRM. There was no such thing. And so I
Well,
think what's happened is with the inclusion of data, we second guess or we won't make a counterintuitive decision. Steve Jobs would have every opportunity put in front of every choice of the direction the team thought. And he'd be like, we're going to go that way. Like these counterintuitive moves you can't find in the data.
right.
Counterintuitive moves aren't there. It takes bravery. It takes risk. It takes getting people to believe a counterintuitive move is the right thing to do or inventing something nobody's ever made before.
Yeah.
Those can't be proven in the data. And so we just have to have the right kind of balance of I could be in a meeting, we all make a decision and we're all happy with the decision until someone says, can we find data that proves this was the right decision? And then it's like, oh, let's just have data slow us down again,
Yeah.
So it's very human. Decision making and changing lives is a very human thing, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've been talking about and actually proved uh, with brain science, which I wasn't expecting, that it's the story that makes people feel something, that the data again can help them justify what have you, but like the stories of what has this sort of like feeling construct. Is there
Mm.
just anything else around just how leaders can think about structuring a story that makes people care? It's not just like a rational kind of outcome, but one that
Yeah.
truly like stirs them.
Yeah. And that's where I think the power of like a short story or like a real story is massively effective.
Mm,
To me, the reason why some leaders haven't adopted a real story, like I'm going to give this presentation at the all hands meeting. And then right here, I'm going to insert a very personal story.
Yeah.
The reason leaders don't do that is because the nature of the construct of the story itself. What it does is it's like, I'm a likable human, but I encountered these horrible roadblocks. I had to go and fight orcs, and and it was very hard, and it was very, and I got a wound in my shoulder, and and then I climbed up, and it was sweaty, and it was terrible, and and then I threw the ring in or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
It's horrible. Like you have to go there, and we don't have to be that dramatic at work.
Yeah.
But we worked with a public CEO, and what had happened is he'd come in from another company, and he showed up very like, I'm awesome. I'm awesome. This is what I did at my other company. I'm awesome. This is what I did. And HR was like, he's not getting traction here. And so we said, okay, just do this one thing. Talk about a quick failure you had at your new company, just quick. And so he put this into all hands, and he's like, hey, when I showed up, I was like, I'm going to double down on this Tiger team effort right there. And it was a mistake, and just kept going. That was it. Standing ovation. I mean, the rest of the content's roughly the same as you used to get, right? But
Yeah.
it humanized him. It made him human. And he's
Yeah.
like, oh, he knows he blew it. I like this guy. He's admitting, he's transparent, right? It is crazy, the power of being really like putting it out there, letting people see your soft underbelly,
Yeah.
and celebrating it, because being human's hard.
So,
It's
so
hard,
good.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
And what's
no major act of courage, but just breaking the fourth wall for this specific show we're doing now is on the drive over. I was like, I've got Nancy on the show today. I have to open with a story. Like I can't like open and just go, here's like housekeeping. Let's like start the show. And so I thought back to the book and like literally had all those stories come back in my head. I was at Box. I was 22. I, was my first like real job out of college. I
so
got to
good.
figure out how to tell a good story and got resonate. And just weirdly, like my brain went to like actually tactically holding the book. So
That's so interesting how
don't grade me on
visceral
the
it
spot. I'm
is.
embarrassed if people as people listen, but I hope that was again, not like a major act of vulnerability or
Yeah.
anything, but a chance to open with just a different narrative or a connection or something personal that helps us kind of
Well, look
bridge
at the
beyond.
visceral, what it did. That visceral recall, it can make you remember a smell you forgot. Like, not that you even smell it, or a
Yeah,
smell can recall a story, but you actually remembered how it felt in the physical world, even though that was a memory. And
yeah,
that's the power of story. That's the power of even just trying to recall a story will do
yeah.
that for you. It'll trigger physical sensations that you
Incredible.
forgot. It's cool. I
So
loved
powerful.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are 8 episodes in to the podcast, but behind the scenes here, working on kind of the next chapter of this thing called Goldenhour that we've been building. And you might have heard it in the opening when we were kind of getting started, believing deeply that brand humanity is going to be just the most important differentiator on the marketing side of the business. And that building trust, but leading with empathy, storytelling, building an emotional relationship with your audience. These are kind of the key elements. I feel like we hit on a lot of this, so forgive me if it's like a bit repetitive. But
Oh,
do you see that same future for marketing? You work with
I
these
do.
incredible,
I do.
companies. How do you see just the level of investment or executive priority, or however we want to kind of frame it around building human brands in this next chapter?
Yeah. So with our own customer base, we do a lot of events. We do a lot of different nature of things. We are seeing a marketing reallocation to live events that's unprecedented.
Live events. Wow.
And it's been, yeah. So that's a for sure thing. The allocation of budget is strong. And we have just yesterday too, I was in our own exec planning. We just did some yesterday. And I said to the team with passion, I got a little teary, that our moat is our community and our fan base. Like sometimes we get so focused on the ICP and only marketing to them that
Yeah.
that we just like swat away the fans. Like, well, they're not relevant. They have no purchasing power. And I'm like, the power of a brand is going to be around the halo effect of the bonds toward the brand.
Wow.
And so we have to be really careful about that. And so there is definitely a shift. You can, Freeman puts out, the event company. They
Yeah.
put out an incredibly powerful report that we helped them with. But I mean, it talks about what each generation is expecting from events, how they're flipping, how you really have to have subject. People want to meet subject matter experts at events. They don't want to
Wow.
meet salespeople. Like, it's really powerful content to set you up to be really successful, because, and their stats also support what I said, which is the amount of allocation. Like, the event companies are blooming right now because the demand is so high.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Getting in person is, I have a weird
So,
anecdote. I'm not dismissing an entire industry as I say this, but I worked at Hopin during
yeah,
the
yeah.
virtual event craze of the COVID era, and saw um, the rise of digital tools to help us kind of bridge that connection when we couldn't. But also saw the fallout when we could, and the world kind of opened up again, and we were able to get back together. And it feels like this exhale that we all did as a society, as a whatever, as the global kind of
Yeah.
world.
I like that. It was an
Words are
exhale.
off today, but that's been, there's just something that happens when people get together in person that nothing else can replace. So
And you think about all the data, all the marketers, they spend hundreds of millions. Some people, I know, people who have larger budgets than
yeah,
that. And the whole thing is to get them in the room with someone, with salesperson, someone, right, to close the deal, and putting them in a room where they could feel the communal effervescence and the sparkle of your brand and the humanity of it. It's just,
yeah,
wow, it's just no comparison.
totally.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree
Yeah.
anymore. But now I'm curious, you have um, some execs that might be naysayers, or boards, or folks that might see historically, I think this is changing a little bit, but brand generally is something you can't measure. It's like the arts and crafts side of marketing, it's fluff or whatever. Um, I'm curious what you would say to them, but also, like, can story become the language that actually changes their minds? I mean, great data from Freeman on events as a
Yeah.
channel,
That's a good
but
report. Yeah.
story as sort of like what kind of brings them on board to being willing to justify an investment in
Yeah.
brand, to hire Duarte to execute the work. Just curious kind of what your thoughts are on those
Yeah,
folks.
we had one of our customers was acquired, and they were already a massive. They got acquired by a more massive
Mm,
company. CEO first thing is like, we are product marketers, and we are not doing any brand marketing. So cut the events,
mm,
cut the brand stuff, right?
yeah,
And so we were like, oh crumb, that's a chunk of what we do. It's not all that we do. And we were like, okay, that's weird. And so in the transition between, like, the CEOs, then this guy actually attended the actual event because he acquired him. You don't necessarily attend it. We
yeah,
worked with him on his talk, right, and worked with him so he could, and it was amazing. It's like, oh, I get it, because he could see in their eyes. He could see the power of the reaction. He could see how important this communal event was to their key stakeholders,
yeah,
and it's a massive event, and that's what changed him, was seeing
yeah,
the sparkle in the eyes of the audience and the visceral reaction. And now we're still working with him, which we were going to be the first budget cut. And it is just powerful, Anthony. I think that's why you love this human side. I think you really get it.
totally. And I've seen a few of
Mhm.
those. It's so funny you reference that as the example, because I've seen in some, you know, founders I've worked with before, but even at Gainsight, how getting people to the event, like, was the unlock. Like, no one didn't believe when you left the event, right? Everyone's like, okay, I
Right.
get why this is so impactful, and just caught up in that magic, that visceral kind of reaction you're
Mhm.
referencing. I think that's a really great way to think about it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
the other element I think folks often talk about is on the other side of brand is culture. Sort of, you have sort
Mhm.
of the external manifestation of your brand story, and the how you want to show up to the world, the relationship you want to develop with your audience. But
Mhm.
the inside is actually mobilizing the team behind that vision, catalyzing them, inspiring them. do you, having done, many of these over the years, worked with the most iconic companies, how have you seen sort of like investment in brand storytelling kind of pay off for internal culture as well?
Yeah, that's a good story. So, some cool things are happening in the sense that brands would come in and we would have to convince them to be empathetic or adopt storytelling. So, good news is we're having to do less and less education when they're coming in. So, there's this yearning they have already to know their audiences. And so leaders now, they're increasingly bringing their own experiences to the stage and to internal meetings and to keynotes. So they're bringing these more personal examples. Yay, my phone's ringing. Sorry
Oh,
about
no
that,
worries.
everybody. I'm gonna turn on
Live
my,
TV.
I told my husband to, but I didn't do it for myself.
All good.
But anyway, they're bringing more of their personal self. So um, doing things like showing open gratitude, acknowledging people for their hard work, spotlighting other people, bringing employees up and celebrating them, or letting them come onto the stage at Dreamforce and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So we are getting requests like, "Hey, here's a deck. Can you make it more human?" Or, "Hey, I'm going to talk to my people. What can we do to make it resonate?" And a lot of that is the thinking that we do. We have an exec right now. That is like openly talked about his family, very high tech
Wow.
organization. But in this keynote, the CEO was going to be talking about his family and even vulnerably talking about his mother's passing.
Oh my
And
goodness.
he did that to set up the power of data. And I was like, what? Because I was talking to my team about it. I'm like, he talked about his mom dying to set up data. And it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, he just kind of unpacked, hey, the things around us, everything around it. This is a piece of data. Everything is data. And when people are alive, we're processing it. And when they've passed, we go through their archives as a form of data. So we either know them or then we discover things we didn't know about them. And that's through collecting kind of this data, you could say,
Yeah.
which is powerful. It kind of makes a visceral attachment to the data.
Yeah.
So we're seeing people be more open. We're writing more and more. As regulation flips and then it flops and then it flips again, this can wipe out 80% of a company's customer base if you haven't been smart about it. So
Right.
we have seen a lot more care given to internal comms because the strategy of it cascading across everybody is so critical, and getting it right and getting the adoption happening is we're having to put more thought into how do we get our employees to adapt, because we're in a constant state of change and employees want certainty and nobody has certainty anymore. I
Right.
used to be able to certainly know about 18 months out. Now it's like, well, here's all these 7 scenarios, everything could go next month.
Right.
So you have to wrap it in meaning to get people to keep going with you as we're all kind of groping in the dark,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, internal comms is really increasing for us lately a lot more
Interesting.
than expected. Hmm.
Wow. Well, it's in my context, my CEO at Gainsight, Nick, who I'm not sure if you know Nick Meda, he was such a master at
Nice.
this, just because he always led with vulnerability and opening up kind of parts of his life and his struggles and all of that, but it always like bridged really authentically to whatever message he was trying to get across, be it at a company all hands or be it on stage in front of 5,000 people in a convention hall.
Smart.
So it feels like it's difficult to, one, I guess, be willing to put yourself out there, especially if you're
Yeah.
an introvert or whatever the case is. But
You
also,
get judged. Yeah.
yeah, totally. And then how do you like bridge it in a way to business that like lands the plane? I imagine it's tricky, but when you do it, you're instantly connected to 5,000
Yeah.
people or your internal team or whatever. So, such a powerful
Yeah.
idea.
It works. Works.
I would love to the extent you're willing, to dive deeper, putting the sort of marketing best practices aside for a second and dive deep into Nancy and your story.
Oh,
Um,
that's so nice.
yeah, you're I mentioned a hero of mine and a friend. And Duarte Inc. is 38 years now in market, having worked with the most influential companies. You've written multiple bestsellers. You've spoken on the industry's biggest stages, 4 million views plus on the TED Talk. When you reflect on all you've created for this practice, how do you think about things like legacy?
Yeah. It's interesting. Some things I love that the firm has done. We have created economy. We have created
Mhm.
jobs, right? We have
Yes.
changed the perception of some of the world's most important ideas. Like that, that right there is kind of legacy enough. And um, I've never been into this for my own gain. It's always felt like a mantle that I had a responsibility to carry, right? It's like legacy for me would be ongoing influence that surpasses my own lifespan.
Yeah.
So I don't think legacy is something like you retire and now you have a legacy.
Right.
And I'm hoping my legacy just continues to propagate through people, through the Duarte culture and other kind of ripple effects. And so I think I always ask myself, like, what ideas, what methods, what mark,
Yeah.
will outlive me, will outpace me. And I don't want it to be that people remember me, but I do know that I want to feel like I ran the race as well as I could, and for me, legacy is about the imprint, I leave on my kids and my grandkids and my friends like that. They carry it also. So,
Yeah.
um, I love that question.
So
Thank you.
good. Yeah. I feel
Good
like we don't
one.
ask these types of questions in
Good
the
one.
professional context.
Well, what's cool about you being the person that's putting this whole brand humanity thing together is you're so fun. You're
Thank
so
you.
human. You show
Thank
up so
you.
human. So
I try to
yeah,
be,
fun.
flaws and all. I try to be. But I think the other element of that I'm trying to unpack is like a brand can only be as good as or as healthy as those who lead it.
Yeah.
And that our own, like we have to work on our own humanity and invest in our own humanity in a world where everything's speeding up. The expectation is we're working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week now.
Yeah.
Everything is just like crazy, and we're not wired for this level of
Mm.
speed. And so, something I often turn to is, personally is faith. And I know we share kind of a faith identity there, faith
Yeah.
tradition. Um, I'm curious just in how faith has played a role in your professional life, being able to
Yeah.
build the business kind of and still be present to your point as a child, as a mother and grandmother.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think people of faith get to operate under an uber narrative, a master narrative, right? That we can see ourselves in that's greater than ourselves. We believe there's something greater than ourselves, which gives us just on the outset a bit more meaning and purpose and destiny, could say
Yes.
a destiny. And for me, when we started this business, it had an extra sense of heaviness to me because
Mm.
in my faith, I believe strongly that God spoke words and things were visualized, right?
Yes.
At the highest level,
Yes.
if we are made in the image of God, we should speak words and see the invisible become visible. And I remember this sense of like, oh my God, this is a lot of responsibility to be spoken word experts who can visualize the invisible and make it visible. So it's been humbling to know that that is quite a bit like in his likeness, which is very, very spiritual to me, what we do in a way. So I do wake up knowing I serve something greater than myself. And all of our company values are based on biblical truths. And which is fun. It's fun. And I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I think also the practice I have of these morning and evening rituals where I examine myself and forgive myself, forgive others. Because man, I'm in these CEO groups and they're like, being a leader today, nothing is like this. Nothing is
Really.
like this. And we have to take a chance and a risk, take a chance and adapt, and we have to almost build forgiveness cultures. And forgiveness is an interesting word, right? That we both particularly appreciate,
Yeah.
where I have to forgive myself when I really screw up. I have to forgive others. I have to be quick, or we won't be able to be agile. We can get hung up and stuck in the past if we can't say, I tried, I failed, I tried, I failed.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I say I'm part of an Uber story, because that's what this is. It's about trying, failing, forgiving, or trying, or something has to be sacrificed for something new to live.
Right.
And that's just kind of the bedrock of what forgiveness is. So I just kind of draw from it every day. It's like breathing. It's like oxygen to me. To have this relationship with an otherworldly being, it fuels me. It really fuels me. I
Yeah.
appreciate you asking. That was nice.
Yeah. No, I take such great inspiration from it because, um, I think it adds also context for our why, like our role in
Yeah.
the story and that added heaviness, that responsibility. So I think it's such an important part
It
of
also gives you the drive to keep going, right?
yeah,
When you feel like, oh, why am I doing this? You're like, oh, that's right. I'm
yeah,
doing it for a bigger purpose.
for a
Yeah.
purpose. Totally. Totally.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, Nancy, I'm so grateful for you sharing your wisdom with us, with me. I always take so much away from, whenever we talk. I have one just closing question. Just in summary, I know you've shared a lot of advice to today's founders, executives, marketers, maybe ones even that touching into the humanity is ones that are overwhelmed by the noise and the speed and change and seeing story having a literally physiological effect on the minds of their audiences, internal and external. So powerful. But if you had like one closing like set of advice for them, what would it be?
Yeah, I think you touched on it. At the core of everything we do is empathy. And I think how we define empathy isn't like the dictionary version of empathy at Duarte. So we would say empathy is know yourself,
Hmm.
accept yourself, or forgive yourself, you could call it. Like know yourself, accept yourself, and then adapt to them. Right.
Yeah.
And part of it is like we think we know ourselves. No, you really need to truly know yourself. You need to know your story. You need to know your master narrative. You really need to know where you're coming from. No, you really need to find that passion. You really need to know yourself because people who communicate from here communicate differently than people who communicate from here. And so find yourself, accept who you are. You're like, you know what? I'm not like you. I'm not like my daughter. I'm not like my audience. So I need to really accept that I'm different, value our differences, and then I need to adapt to you. I shouldn't expect you to come to my perspective. I need to adapt and try to see things through your eyes. So it's empathy is know yourself, accept yourself, and adapt to others. And if the whole world could do that, could you imagine?
You're
Could
much
you even
better.
imagine, Anthony, where we'd be right now?
Oh my
But
goodness.
that's our passion here, and that's our driver.
That's incredible. Well, if folks want to follow along, I know you're active on LinkedIn. I think you have a newsletter as well. And then of
Yeah.
course, Duarte's website for the business. Anywhere else? Where's the best place for folks to follow along with your story?
Pretty active on LinkedIn. Duarte.com is amazing. We have tons of tools, especially for marketers. You go to the resource section. Actually, you can get Resonate for free up there. It's a
Oh, cool.
multimedia version of Resonate. There's tons of stuff up there that we just kind of throw out there for people to change lives, right? To change lives. That's why we're in it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Nancy, thank you
This was
so
fun.
much. I appreciate it. And everyone watching, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Thanks for
Thanks all.
having me.